Welcome to the S&D 50 College Football Show.
I can't hear you. Give me one sec.
Can you hear me singing about the S&D 50?
I have no idea if you guys can hear me or not.
Spency
I
Wentz.
think my cord's bad.
Ben, what's up?
How's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness?
Well, it exists.
Okay, cool. I'm back.
Jacob, have you seen the deck beforehand, or are you also going in blind?
I want it, but I'm going in blind. I mean, I just want it beforehand so I can really plan out how I'm going to rip the AP poll.
Guys, we have real graphics this week.
You're trying to get sued.
It's called fair use, I think is what it's called, Ben. Andrew is already recording this conversation. Regardless of what he says, this could end up on the internet.
My introduction to Ben. Ben is a man who we have known for a decade. We met in college. We've been talking ball for 10 years, and he is the group chat. If Spencer and I are chatting ball, Ben's in the chat. This is the S&D 50 College Football Show, Week 3 ratings and preview. Today, we have our three esteemed co-hosts. Spencer, how are you?
I am delightful.
How's your day been?
I'm recording from a closet, so that's how it's going.
Jacob, welcome back. How are you?
Andrew, I got a fire lit under me. This morning when I opened up the AP poll, I saw lots of atrocities, and I cannot wait to get into them.
I'm so excited. I haven't even really looked at the AP poll because now I'm just vicariously living through the S&D 50. We have a new co-host on the show. Ben, we've danced around it. We've talked about you, a man who loves Dan Lanning, the Oregon Ducks, the Syracuse Orange. How are you?
So at this rate, I'm honestly wondering if next week you'll have another person go on, and like as college football goes, you just expand the guests on the show.
I'm so excited to do this today. We will jump right in. We will begin with Week 2, games to review. UAB and Navy. Navy won 38-24, but it was a close game heading into the fourth quarter, so we are going to give it a green check mark of competitiveness. We had Bowling Green going to Cincinnati. Cincinnati won 34-20. That was not competitive. Central Michigan Pitt. This was a game late in the third, but Pitt pulled away 45-17. So we will call it competitive. Connecticut and Syracuse, arguably game of the week. Syracuse wins 27-20 in overtime. Kansas and Missouri, a barn burner, a thriller. Missouri wins 42-31. That was competitive. Liberty, Jacksonville State, not as close, 34-24, but it was close enough.
The model clearly knew what was going on in the UConn-Cuse game better than Cuse did, because that Syracuse team was running sprints. They were disappointed with that outcome.
We honestly thought Central Michigan and Pitt would be a little more evenly matched. 2 weeks into the season, at the end of the day, there's still a lot we don't know about any team in the model. So we might say these teams are right next to each other in the ratings, but if you don't have enough performance history to have an accurate rating, like Pitt apparently didn't, then it's going to be wrong. And you're going to see that all over the place. There are going to be notable teams in the top 25 that don't even make our 50 because they just don't have enough of a body of work yet to get the rating that they genuinely deserve. So we'll see that play out over the course of the season. Early on, these are some pretty good games.
Our last two games of Week 2 were Virginia, NC State. NC State wins 35-31. Very close game. Sam Houston State, Hawaii. Hawaii had a couple late scores, which put them over the top, but it was a close game. Week 2, the model was 8 of 9 in finding competitive games, which is 88%. And on the season, between weeks 1 and 2, we're batting 76%. We now unveil the S&D 50, starting with teams 41 through 50. At 50, we have Houston, 49, Navy, 48, California, 47, UCF, 46, Memphis, 45, Florida State, 44, Washington, 43, Texas State, 42, Texas Tech, and 41, Purdue. Houston at 50, up 27 spots.
I think Houston is going to be a very competitive Big 12 team. I literally heard some analysts bashing Houston for only beating Stephen F. Austin 27-0. Stephen F. Austin is a very good team. I'm excited to see what Houston does. I think they might be turning a little corner here. They're going to be more competitive than last year for sure.
They've got Colorado this week. Colorado's got a little bit more of a pedigree and some better players.
I can agree with you, Spencer. I can agree with you. I'll just go ahead and call it now. Houston over Colorado. Exactly. In the S&D I trust. I'm just glad to see the S&D rewarding Houston. Okay. So 50 is a good spot for him.
Shouts out to UCF and the 2017 national champions. UCF are starting to get some momentum. It's also going to be interesting to see what happens with Texas Tech with all the money they put in to bring in the new team and everything, how it goes. The schedule's going to start to get a little bit tougher for them. And this is about the only metric that will not quit on Purdue.
Barry Odom's turning Purdue around. Navy, 49, up 18 spots in the rankings.
A great branch of the military.
Navy UAB, I thought Navy would win I didn't think it would be as competitive. The S&D 50 had this as a competitive game, and it in fact was. With UAB, who did they struggle with against in week 1? Alabama A&M. So I thought that UAB would be crushed by Navy. It'll be interesting to see what Navy does, but it is a good win. Cal, 48, up 3 spots in the rankings.
Jacob, I just need to know, is Texas Southern a quality FCS opponent?
No.
All right. That was a beat down. So it's good. It's good to have some perspective on that.
UCF, 47, up 11 spots. They did have quite the scare week 1. I was thinking they might get upset, and they survived, and they're now 2-0.
Scott Frost is back, obviously turning that around. The 2017 national championship, trying to get the band back together and see what they can do in the Big 12.
I think it's good that Scott Frost has got away from Nebraska and having to play in those one-possession games. It's a lot to carry.
Yeah, I think the football environment's a little different in Nebraska than Orlando, Florida. Just a general vibe feel.
Oh, Memphis, up 13 spots in the rankings. I think Memphis could be a contender. There are a couple teams in the American that should be looked at as those that are chasing USF. I think Memphis is one to note, and I like that they're being rewarded here at 46.
Yeah, this range of the model here, especially as we kind of plug along, is where you're really going to see a lot of your E5 conference competitors, but not leaders. This is where you're going to find teams like Memphis and Navy popping in, and if they lose, right back out of the S&D 50. This is a really fun section of the model. We're going to see a lot of changes in this area week over week.
Florida State at 45, up 4 spots in the rankings.
This is where the S&D is so beautiful. The AP poll, I feel like half the weight is the tradition of the name of the school. 50% of the vote is basically going to tradition. Is that school traditionally good or not? Florida State is right where they should be on the S&D. They just played an FCS team, and a terrible one, and they worked them over. 45 is a great spot. Now, they did move up 4 spots, but it was from 49 to 45 here in the S&D. They moved up 4 spots in the AP poll from 14 to 10. They're literally a top 10 team for beating out. I do think Alabama's a good team, but, we don't know a lot about Alabama yet, and the S&D is saying we don't know a lot about Alabama. So it's hard to gauge the weight of that victory. It's just interesting to see how they'll jump from 14 to 10 in the AP, and here we are, 49 to 45 in the S&D.
They played East Texas A&M. I've never heard of that school.
I've never heard of them, and I follow FCS. I was like, is that team even D1? Is that D2 team? That's what I thought at first.
The score was 77-3. The team does not have an icon when I look it up on Google. There is just the grayed out badge.
Alabama is still on the outside looking in because they haven't had an opportunity to jump up. Florida State, Alabama, none of us on the pod think that these are the 45th or the 55th best team in America, wherever they land. These are better teams than their rating, but this is not an eye test rating. This is not an expectations rating. This is a performance rating. We don't know how good either of them are.
As Bama starts winning, that Bama win for Florida State reflects better on Florida State in the S&D, correct?
Yeah, we don't let it push it forever. At the end of the day, the teams in October are different than the teams in September or August. But yeah, there's some impact there. If they both keep winning, they'll help each other.
That's so beautiful. So beautiful to see a win, a victory in past weeks is getting accounted for here on the performance.
Washington at 44, down 8 spots in the rankings. Texas State at 43, up 10 spots in the rankings. Texas Tech, 42, up 9 spots in the rankings. I'm excited for this Texas Tech team because we have the Utah game, and as we all get ready for that big noon showdown, we will really see, like Ben said, what this Texas Tech team is made of.
I literally looked up who Texas Tech has played 3 or 4 times, and I still can't tell you who they've played in their 2 games. So it's just hard to gauge what we have with Texas Tech.
I mean, they got Oregon State on Saturday, so that's a big jump up from Arkansas Pine Bluff and Kent State. So They're starting to get into the meat. And then obviously, as Andrew said, that Big 12 game, big noon game against Utah, which is 10 o'clock local kick, that will be an interesting one. That's the biggest one they're going to have all season. So we'll see if the mercenary strategy pays off for them.
Shout out to Kent State, though. Not this week, but last week. Kent State won their first game. They snapped a 21-game losing streak that dated through all of last season and into the season before.
Who did they beat, Spencer?
They beat Merrimack. They beat Merrimack on a fourth quarter 100-yard kickoff return by a man named Dorillist Clark. None of that. That's the greatest losing streak ending touchdown that you could write. It's incredible.
Purdue 41.
It took them the better part of the second and third quarter to really pull away. I mean, they won. That's not nothing, especially when you consider where this team was last year.
Southern Illinois isn't a terrible FCS. I'm not going to put them top tier FCS, but they're not bad.
Teams 31 through 40. At 40, we have Kansas, 39 Wisconsin, 38 NC State, 37 UNLV, 36 Louisville, 35 Utah, 34 Arizona, 33 Minnesota, 32 Miami, Florida, 31 Texas. Kansas at 40, down 34 spots in the rankings.
This is a Kansas team that had the lead against Missouri with 5 minutes left to go in the game. Missouri ended up winning by 11 points, but they scored 2 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes. Kansas is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Big 12. They're going to fly under the radar for most people. Neither of those teams were ranked in the AP. There's a top 20 matchup for the S&D 50. And Kansas, despite losing, didn't drop out. You're going to see repeated as good teams do start losing to other good teams. They're not going to slide all the way out of the ratings. They're going to stay, in this case, all the way in the top 40.
This one breaks my heart, not because I'm a Jayhawk fan. When I learned about what Missouri was doing with their first 6 games at home, I became an avid anti-Missouri fan. So anyone but Missouri. I just don't have a lot of respect if you can't leave your home in the non-conference.
Wisconsin 39, down 6 spots in the rankings.
They beat a very bad Middle Tennessee team. According to the SND, we should have a game this week with Wisconsin-Alabama.
The only thing I can say about Wisconsin is one time when I was playing high school football, I sacked a guy in front of Jim Leonard, and he said it was one of the hardest hits he'd ever seen. That was the peak of my athletic accomplishments.
That game down in Tuscaloosa is going to be a good one. Wisconsin's chance to show that it belongs where we have them.
NC State at 38, up 9 spots.
They won a close game against Virginia.
The craziest part about that game was that it was a non-conference game between 2 ACC opponents because you gotta love the scheduling contracts.
UNLV at 37, up 13 spots in the rankings. They've dodged Idaho State. They've beaten UCLA, and here they are at 37.
Yeah, what do we think about that win against UCLA?
I think it's a good example of how hard it is to judge talent. I think it shows that it's hard to bet on the people side of college football.
UNLV feels like the home of the Big Ten and SEC rejects, the big name recruits that for some reason or another flamed out at the big schools, and here they've come to Vegas all together to prove that they got something.
UNLV played in week 0. So you have a team that's won 3 games. They get the bump because they have that extra game. They're on a bye week this week, so it'll be interesting to see where they land next week once everyone gets to their 3rd game. Louisville at 36, up 4 spots in the rankings.
I really like Louisville.
Utah at 35, down 13 spots in the rankings.
Yeah, their rating did go up, to be clear, and we don't show that here. Maybe we will in the future. Their rating went up, but not enough to hold that spot. We don't have, our model doesn't assume that you get to keep your rank or anything like that. You go where you're rated, and other teams have better showings and passed them.
Man, how beautiful would it be if every time a team played an FCS school, they dropped in the polls? It's just good to see this model reward quality opponents. And my last point on Utah here, AP poll bumped up 5 spots for beating an FCS team.
Yep. 34, Arizona up 10 spots in the rankings. At 33, Minnesota down 12 spots in the rankings.
I love Minnesota. What they're doing there in building, obviously they have a big game coming up this weekend with Cal, but they beat Northwestern State. I don't think anyone knows which state that's the Northwest in, but they're kind of starting to do something.
At 32, Miami down 13 spots in the rankings.
Number 5 in the AP poll, and we just love. I don't want to say we love to hate Miami, but we love to put Miami where they probably belong until they prove otherwise.
Texas at 31, up 11 spots in the rankings.
Texas will continue to march up.
Teams 21 through 30. 30 USF, 29 Florida, 28 Georgia Tech, 27 BYU, 26 Vanderbilt, 25 Maryland, 24 Michigan State, 23 Clemson, 22 Oregon, 21 Tulane. At 30 USF, up 5 spots in the rankings, coming off a gigantic win against Florida, the USF Bulls.
I mean, let's talk about the fact that Florida is at 29 and USF is at 30. That gap was big, and while USF beat them, USF didn't dominate Florida in that game. USF won it in the fourth quarter. They're within half a point of each other in our rating scale. So while USF won this, we feel really good about where these teams are rated, especially relative to each other.
You win the game by a walk-off field goal, so that will impact it and probably explain why USF is behind a team they beat.
USF wins their first road ranked win since 2011 against Notre Dame.
Big game for them this weekend, though.
Huge. They play Miami.
On the road.
Florida at 29, down 19 spots in the rankings.
Here is where I love that the SND doesn't care where you started. Florida, they started at 6 preseason SND wise, and here they are. They take a loss. They drop all the way down to 29. We don't see that kind of stuff happen often in AP and coaches polls. It's just great to see.
Florida might continue to fall. They got LSU coming up, number 5 Miami, number 7 Texas. They might continue to fall out of this with all the teams they got coming up.
In the words of Andrew, you don't want Florida's schedule.
Georgia Tech, same spot in the rankings.
This is the first time a team has held their rank outside of Ohio State at number 1 and another team in the top 10.
Give me Haynes King, and a little bit more of Haynes King. They got Clemson this week. That's going to be a fun battle. Bring their lunch pail in a physical dogfight.
I'm sorry, Spencer. I'll take Georgia Tech over Louisville any day.
BYU at 27, up 10 spots in the rankings. They're coming off a win against lowly Stanford.
State of Utah has some good coaches. Kyle Whittingham, Morgan Scalley, Kalani Sitake. But the best coach in the state of Utah is not a head coach. It is the defensive coordinator for BYU, Jay Hill. He'll be the reason that they win games this year.
Here's the reason I cannot get behind BYU is their quarterback wears number 47, and it is all because of that.
Vanderbilt, 26, up 5 spots in the rankings.
I think it makes sense Vanderbilt would be high because they had a returning quarterback, and that was factored into this. So until you get more results, that's going to be weighted higher.
They beat Virginia Tech. They beat them on the road. I could see a world in which Vanderbilt is competitive.
Maryland, 25, up 14 spots in the rankings.
Slept on jerseys.
Yeah, the way they incorporate the flag is pretty awesome. They've got a cakewalk of a game this week against FCS Towson. So wouldn't be surprised to see Maryland slide in the ratings, even if they get a few points added to their rating.
Michigan State at 24, up 3 spots in the rankings. They win a double overtime classic against Boston College.
It seems like the Big Ten made an effort to schedule a lot of cupcakes this coming weeks. I don't expect Michigan State to move much in the coming week.
Clemson at 23, up 15 spots in the rankings.
Impressive they rose. In the AP they fell, given the results they had last week. But that game they have with Georgia Tech will be a fun one this weekend.
I like this. Clemson was taking a lot of flack because they were down at half to Troy, but they turned it on the second half. In the AP, like Ben was saying, they did fall, which I hate because you have so many teams. You got so many teams in the AP that rose for beating FCS teams. And here you got Clemson drop 4 spots. And they actually beat an FBS team. Like, come on. You got Florida State jumping Clemson for beating an FCS. So just a shame.
Oregon, 22, down 2 spots in the rankings.
They scheduled a Power 4 team and absolutely waxed them. Total control. Go Ducks. Can't wait to see them continue to rise.
The S&D has zero respect for Oklahoma State if they drop them 2 spots.
Oklahoma State, number 99 ranked team in the full S&D 136. Other teams in the 90s include such esteemed foes as Northern Illinois, UAB, Arkansas State, Louisiana, and New Mexico, to name a few. And they are immediately ahead of Marshall and Louisiana Tech. Oregon fell in the rankings, but they got credit for that win against Oklahoma State. About 75 points. They got passed by several teams with better wins than they had.
The difference between team number 22 and 99, and that is 66 points on the field.
And 66 points on the field equates to roughly 600 points in our model. So there is a gap there. It's pretty sizable.
You figured Mike Gundy would have learned from Deion Sanders when they sparked the flame against Oregon a couple years back. It was a similar turnout here in this game.
Tulane, 21, up 9 spots in the rankings.
It was a competitive game against South Alabama. Tulane was able to hold out.
USF has survived a couple big tests. They obviously got the one against this Saturday against Miami coming up. Tulane's got one in a couple weeks against Ole Miss. So they're both going to get the chance to show against Power 4 that they can rise. But Tulane, I'm actually bullish on. They seem to have something going there. The vibes are high with the Green Wave.
Teams 11 through 20. USC at 20, Arkansas 19, Nebraska 18, Mississippi State 17, Georgia 16, South Carolina 15, Rutgers 14, Oklahoma 13, Auburn 12, Missouri 11. Let's start with USC at 20, up 3 spots in the rankings.
Teams are getting rewarded for beating these Sun Belt teams. USC with a victory over Georgia Southern, and here they get the bump.
Georgia Southern, not state, right?
Georgia Southern, not state.
Arkansas at 19, up 5 spots in the rankings.
Arkansas is interesting because they're an SEC team that our model really likes. They're not ranked right now.
Returning quarterback, returning coach, that probably played into that. They play Ole Miss this week.
If they beat Ole Miss, they'll be probably top 10 in the S&D 50 next week. Nebraska at 18, up 8 spots in the rankings. Mississippi State at 17, up 26 spots in the rankings.
This showed how much Cam Scadaboo meant to the Sun Devils.
Looks like Levitt's moxie wasn't enough to get them the win there in Mississippi State.
It shows the cowbells are intimidating if you're coming from Arizona State. Mississippi State fans, if they're on offense, defense, special teams, or whatever, they're ringing those bells. It's hard to go on the road to an SEC team when you're not used to that. It just means a little bit more down there.
To be fair, Mississippi State did need a 2-minute drill to win the game. The defense had it on ice.
Arizona State fall out of the S&D 50. Mississippi State properly rewarded for beating a team the S&D had up high. Georgia at 16, down 3 spots off beating Austin Peay. Georgia had trouble with them. They did not roll.
I'm going to be following Austin Peay through FCS ball the rest of the year. This team might be here to do some damage. Them and Tarleton.
South Carolina at 15, down 8 spots in the rankings. They played South Carolina State. South Carolina didn't pull away until later in the game.
I think context matters, though. That game was on lightning delays. Their whole routine's been thrown off. You got to go out and beat the teams that you're supposed to, so makes sense.
Context doesn't matter to the AP poll. They dropped South Carolina 1 spot for when beating a FCS team handily, while other teams got bumped up 4 or 5 spots for the same kind of game.
Rutgers at 14, up 15 spots in the rankings.
Miami of Ohio, they beat the Red Hawks. Fun fact, my 5th grade teacher is solely responsible for the Miami, Ohio Red Hawks having their nickname the Red Hawks. They had a write-in contest, and she suggested the Red Hawks, and they went with it.
That's incredible.
I shouldn't say solely responsible for. I know like 8,000 people submitted Red Hawks, and she was just one of them. But the way she told the story, Mrs. Taylor, shout out to Mrs. Taylor. She's responsible for that nickname, but not responsible for the beatdown they got by Rutgers.
Rutgers is now beaten the Ohio Bobcats and Miami of Ohio. 2 good MAC teams. If anyone was paying attention, the Ohio Bobcats knocked off West Virginia at home, their first win against West Virginia since 1949. Rutgers gets the bump because Ohio beats a P4 team. Oklahoma at 13, up 28 spots.
I mean, you'll notice we haven't talked about Michigan because Michigan fell out of the top 50. Oklahoma took their spot, basically. They were in the 50 before, but they made a big jump by really dominating good opponent. Oklahoma really proved that they were the better team over 4 grueling quarters.
John Mateer reminds me of when I play the EA college football video game because every single throw he does is just on a line.
Auburn at 12, up 5 spots in the rankings.
This is where we're seeing that Baylor beating SMU bumped them up.
Missouri at 11, up 7 spots in the rankings.
How great would it be to live in Columbia and be a Missouri fan right now? Yeah, it'd be like the next 6 weekends, I got a game to go to every week.
To be clear, we don't hate on Missouri. We just hate on their schedule. I just want to make an observation here about 11 through 20. There are only 2 conferences represented here. The top of the S&D 50 right now is extremely top heavy. This is Big Ten and SEC country right now. They're not Big Ten and SEC all the way to the top. There's some infiltrators in here, and you'll see teams drop out and other teams move in. But this week, I mean, that's pretty accurate. I like how that looks.
Here we are. The S&D 50 top 10 new graphics this week. We're going team by team. At number 10, we have Indiana coming off a win against Kennesaw State 56-9.
I mean, this wasn't a competitive game. Remember, right now at least, we may revise this, but our competitive score is a golf score. The lower the score, the more competitive the game. Indiana really controlled this one start to finish, and that's why they're here.
At 9, we have Texas A&M coming off a win against Utah State 44-22, up 7 spots in the rankings.
So this was a top 20 team last week. They're a top 10 team this week. You can see a bigger rating impact for beating a better Utah State team than Indiana got for beating a Kennesaw State.
At number 8, we have Iowa State down 3 spots in the rankings. They come off a field goal winner against Iowa.
It was a very competitive game. This rating, that plus 39 is a pretty low rating to rise, especially on a big week by this. We got to remember, Iowa State has a win against Kansas State. Kansas State just lost to Army, who lost to Tarleton State. So the chain of impacts here is that Iowa State doesn't get as much credit in the ratings this week because their last opponent lost to the team who arguably has the worst loss of the season.
Even though Iowa State fell 3 spots, they are still top 10, which is right where they should be, unlike the AP poll, which has them at 14.
Army in the index, they're 133 out of 136. The only teams lower rated than Army are UMass, Eastern Michigan, and Middle Tennessee State.
Where is Kansas State now?
They're 108. The rating gap, even though Kansas State lost to Army, they're still rated 300 points higher rated than Army, even though they lost to Army. And it's because Army's loss was that bad.
At 7, TCU Horned Frogs coming off a bye. They're up 5 spots in the rankings, but they get a boost in rating because North Carolina collects their first win against Charlotte.
North Carolina is the entire reason of the boost.
Like I said last week, TCU Big 12 champs.
At 6, we have Ole Miss coming off their win against Kentucky 30-23. They are up 3 spots in the rankings.
And Ole Miss with an S&D top 20 matchup, another one for an SEC team here. Now we got Ole Miss hosting number 19 Arkansas. And Ole Miss at 54-43, and Arkansas is at 53-39. So just under 100 points difference. 100 points is basically 1 to 2 touchdown game.
At 5, we have the LSU Tigers coming off their win against Louisiana Tech. It was 23-7.
143 is kind of in the range where we would say this isn't a highly competitive game, but it wasn't a blowout either. It was a game where the winner won the game and had control pretty decently throughout. LSU got credit as well for Clemson winning.
LSU better enjoy it now because Florida is better than people realize, and it'll be interesting if Florida beats LSU. What happens to South Florida and the rankings even more? So
if Florida wins, USF is going to see a big bump.
At 4, Illinois, the Illini, a win against Duke 45-19.
Illinois is legit, and we're not too different here from the AP. We have them at 4. The AP has them at 9. Illinois doesn't have a real test until they travel to Indiana in a couple of weeks. That'll be a top 10 S&D matchup. It'll be a top 25 AP matchup. That'll be a really good game to watch in 2 weekends.
the spread in the Illinois game, Illinois was only favored by 2.5 points over Duke. I remember, Andrew, I sent a screenshot of that spread to you, and your response was free money. Like if you were paying attention to the SND, you knew Illinois was going to win that game, and it wasn't going to be by 2.5 points, and they showed it in a 45-19 win over Duke.
We don't give betting advice, and this is not meant to be predictive. Just got to be clear about that. Credit to Duke. Duke put up 30 good minutes, a 1-point game. They forgot that they're expected to show up for 60.
And it's hard to show up for 60 when you're playing the 4th best team in the country.
That's right. Tennessee at 3. Again, so spicy. They win against another directional school, almost as bad as Florida State's win. They beat East Tennessee State 72-17, and they get a 38-point rating bump. They are down 1 spot in the rankings.
They got passed. They did get their bump. They got a little bit for beating East Tennessee State. But when I say a little bit, I mean very little. The rest of that was a slight bump for Syracuse's win.
At 2, the Penn State Nittany Lions. They beat FIU. They're up 1 spot in the rankings.
It was only 10-0 at halftime. This was a game that I checked in on from time to time. I started watching a little bit more when in the third quarter they weren't demolishing them by like 40, which is kind of my expectation. Obviously, they didn't even get that many points, but it wasn't really close at the end of the day. To me, this is the most impressive part. They gave up 290 yards of offense to FIU and 0 points. I think Penn State may let teams march down the field, but their defense is elite.
And at 1, another week, another number 1 ranking for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
This game was not close. Grambling State got trounced. Having the Green Bay Packers logo in different colors didn't do any good for them. They get a little bit of credit for Texas, and they just continue to have quite a bit of separation between them and the next best team. I think if they had a bye week and everyone they played in the past lost and Penn State won, Penn State might pass them, but Ohio State is looking like the number 1 team in the country for sure.
This brings us to our week 2 biggest winners and losers. So we'll start with the teams that dropped the most overall in their rating points. So we have University of Louisiana Monroe dropping 240 rating points, Kansas State dropping 242 rating points, Western Kentucky dropping 260 rating points, Eastern Michigan dropping 400 rating points, and UMass dropping 595 rating points.
You know it drops you the most, right? Losing to a really bad school. That's all it takes. So that's what happened to UMass.
Kansas State loses to Army, and that moves them down 242 spots. But UMass to almost, double that? More than double that? That is a precipitous fall.
Army dropped by more when they lost to Tarleton State. Home game to Bryant. I can't even tell you what FCS conference Bryant plays in. I can tell you that they were probably a 16 seed at some point in college basketball. Bryant plays in the Coastal Athletic Association, which is a real conference, and I definitely did not make that up. And speaking of marquee opponents, the week before beating UMass, they lost to New Mexico State.
Our teams that moved up the most in the rankings and overall in rating points, we have Pitt up 210 rating points for beating Central Michigan. Mississippi State up 215 points for beating Arizona State. Cincinnati up 222 points. They beat Bowling Green. Oklahoma up 225 points for beating Michigan. And Toledo up 247 rating points.
Let's talk about Toledo putting the beat down on Western Kentucky. This is something I love about our model, is it doesn't just care about teams at the top. Toledo really putting a beat down on another team of like roughly equivalent caliber, that gets them a lot of points. But you're moving up in the world, and if Toledo starts beating people at that level, they're going to move up again. There's a lot of egalitarianism built into this model to let teams move up as they beat opponents and move up to the next tier and try and prove themselves at that tier.
Toledo, week 1, played Kentucky, and the final score was 24-16. Kentucky plays Ole Miss competitively with a competitiveness score of 88. So Toledo's getting a bump, too, because past opponents played well.
All I know is I need to be watching more MAC football because I'm a G5 lover, but I'll be honest, MAC has not been my first choice. I need to turn it on more.
Week 3 conference index. At 9, we have Conference USA down 77 rating points. At 8, we have the MAC down 133 rating points. The Sun Belt at number 7 in the rankings, down 69 points in the ratings. The Mountain West at 6, down 9 points in rating. The American at 5, down 21 points in the rating score. The ACC at 4, up 6 points in rating. The Big 12 at 3, down 8 points in rating. The Big 10 at 2, up 31 points in rating. And the SEC at 1, at 75 points in rating.
I actually disagree with the model right now. And obviously, we're only 2 weeks in, so this is probably why the model is showing this. But the Mountain West, I think, is a very weak conference. 3 teams in the Mountain West this week nearly get upset by Big Sky schools. Sacramento State lost by 3 to Nevada. Northern Colorado lost by 4 to Colorado State. And Idaho State lost by 10 to New Mexico, but was leading that game in the fourth quarter once again. I think this is the Mountain West knowing how to schedule a little bit better than the MAC schedules. This is the Jacob opinion here. The Mountain West is the 8th best conference in the league.
All right, a new segment we are bringing on, the Week 3 playoff picture. If everything was to shake out as the S&D 50 has it currently in rankings, we would have the following. The 7-10 matchup would be TCU, Indiana. TCU would be hosting. Ole Miss would be playing Tulane at Ole Miss. LSU would be playing Clemson at LSU. Iowa State would be playing Texas A&M at Iowa State. Winners would have Ohio State. So the winner of Iowa State and Texas A&M would play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Winner of LSU Clemson would play Illinois in the Cotton Bowl. Winner of Ole Miss Tulane would play Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl. And winner of TCU Indiana would play Penn State in the Orange Bowl.
I mean, first observation as we put this together is how great would it be to have another Death Valley matchup, but in the other Death Valley to start the playoffs. 11 and 12, Tulane and Clemson, neither of those teams are even in the S&D top 20, let alone top 12. And Tulane at 21 is higher rated than any individual ACC team at this time.
It's never too early to be talking playoffs, right? If we see Iowa State beat Texas A&M, we got an Ohio State, Iowa State game in the Rose Bowl. Whoo! People like me would be loving that. I'm all in on the Cyclones. That point about Tulane being higher than any other ACC team is just so interesting, judging that the ACC snuck in 2 teams to the playoffs last year, while the Big 12 only got their champion.
Tulane as a stand-in for the American champion here. The American is the 5th best conference after the Power 4. Tulane, USF, we didn't talk about this earlier, but they don't play in the regular season. There's a real possibility that if both teams win out, you have 2 undefeateds playing in the American title game. I don't even know what you would do with that if you're the committee. We'll see where they get. If they win out, they're both going to be rated really highly by our model, at least. Fans of the G5, there's hope in the American. But let's not forget that Tulane has to play at Ole Miss. If both of these teams win out, it will include road SEC wins between them. That's not nothing.
And in our playoff picture, this would be a rematch, Tulane-Ole Miss. Tulane would have to go back to Ole Miss and do it again.
This is just too good. Andrew and Spencer, as you talk about this, I'm thinking this is the biggest hypothetical of all. Say South Florida runs the table, Tulane runs the table. Say Tulane beats South Florida in the championship. I don't think you can keep South Florida out with non-conference wins against Boise, Florida, and Miami. That would mean they would have beat Miami. So let's go American.
With if that happened, who gets bumped out in our playoff right here?
It's Indiana. In this scenario here, let us know in comments on YouTube or podcast apps if you want us to make a theoretical on some of the future playoff models they're putting together as well. We think it'd be cool to see if future playoff models, that's 16 or 24, how would our rating evaluate that?
This brings us to Week 3 games to watch. These are the games that the S&D 50 model has identified as competitive games. We have them in order for when they kick off top to bottom. So on Friday, we have New Mexico going to UCLA. This is the 98th ranked team going to the 110th ranked UCLA. The rank difference is 12. That game is at 10 p.m. Eastern Friday.
UCLA has a rating of 4740, which is only about 45 points behind New Mexico at 4785.
Georgia going to Tennessee, the 16th ranked Georgia Bulldogs to the number 3 ranked Tennessee Volunteers. The rank difference is 13. That's Saturday at noon. Clemson going to Georgia Tech. That's ranked 23rd Clemson going to ranked 28th Georgia Tech. The rank difference is 5. That is Saturday at noon. South Florida 30th going to Miami, Florida 32nd. The rank difference is 2. Saturday 4:30 Eastern.
Yeah, the rank difference is 2. South Florida and Miami, the rank difference is 2. The rating difference is less than 2. Only a 1.5 rating separates these two teams. Sandwich in between them, if you've forgotten, Texas.
Delicious. That will be hopefully the game of games to watch. Liberty going to Bowling Green. That's ranked 115 against 112. The rank difference is 3. That's Saturday at 5 p.m. Florida Atlantic at 107th, going to Florida International at 105, Saturday at 6 p.m.
Can anybody guess what game of all those games I'm most excited to watch?
I think it's Liberty Bowling Green.
You got it, Andrew.
Yeah!
I'm ready to see some MAC throw down on Conference USA here. I look at New Mexico, UCLA, and I think, oh, is that a basketball matchup when I hear must-watch game?
It's so true. It should be a great game. And here's the deal. Once again, the index calling these out. We're batting 76% on the season. There's a more than likely chance these will be competitive. So at least score watch them. They might be worth turning on in the fourth quarter. We have a couple more games to outline here. We have Arkansas at 19 in our rankings, going to Ole Miss at number 6 in our rankings. The rank difference is 13. That's Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Old Dominion, 87th ranked, going to Virginia Tech, 92 in the rankings. The rank difference is 5. That's Saturday at 7. Vanderbilt at 26 in the rankings, going to South Carolina, who is 15th in the rankings. The rank difference is 11. That is Saturday at 7:45. Air Force at 78th, going to Utah State, who is the 80th ranked team. That rank difference is 2. That's late night action, Saturday at 9:45 p.m. Eastern.
That Air Force Utah State matchup is really good Mountain West football. Air Force is a mystery. I think this game is going to do a lot in defining who Air Force is this season. But I think Utah State put up a respectable showing against their fellow Aggies from Texas A&M. With Boise State losing to USF, bouncing back against Eastern Washington, but still kind of on the back foot relative to how they expect to start the season, Utah State could see an opening.
Fresno State is looking very solid in the Mountain West. But yes, I believe Air Force and Utah State are very evenly matched, so it will be a good game.
The game I'm most excited to watch, it's going to shock you, Old Dominion, Virginia Tech. Old Dominion beat Virginia Tech in 2019. If this happens again, that is a problem for Virginia Tech. If it's competitive, this will harrow up all of the nightmares of years past. It will be something to watch if it is competitive.
Respect to the Sun Belt. I agree with you, Andrew, that Old Dominion and Virginia Tech will be a fun watch.
As always, in God we trust, all others bring data. We're so excited to see how the model performs this week. We're so excited to keep rolling this out week after week. Thank you so much to those who listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. We love you all. We appreciate your time. We hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.